Hello and welcome. My name is Aaron and this is the Thrive Live podcast, where I'm going to be sitting down and chatting with some pretty special people that have inspired me along my health journey. I hope these discussions can inform and inspire you along your journey, so please listen with an open heart and an open mind and enjoy the show. Thanks for tuning in. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive Live podcast. I've got this morning Chris Sulfa, the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover. And I don't say that lightly. This is the man that's the wizard and the magician that's behind all my editing, all the videos, all the artwork on the social media stuff. So Chris, welcome to the Thrive Live podcast. And man, thanks for having me at your house here. I know it's a busy morning for you and giving us the time for it. So
I'm honoured, thank you. That was, what an intro. Wow. No, but I am honoured to work on your podcast, man, and help bring the vision to life.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Like you're such skills, and you've got an eye for all the little intricate stuff, and even just like the thumbnail stuff on YouTube. Everything just looks mint now. Yeah. So thanks so much.
No, I appreciate it, man. I've always loved big picture vision. Like when people have a goal that they want to achieve, and they, I just love being a part of the whole bringing an idea to fruition. So,
yeah, I was saying to Kira, like, it's without your support in my vision, like, I think I probably would have fallen on my feet a few times, and you having the determination to see me succeed and see me put this podcast out was just so much inspiration for me to keep going forward. And yeah, man, I just have so much gratitude for the friendship that we've created, and
I appreciate that.
Yeah, now the business sort of stuff that we're creating together, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and vice versa, man. Part of that big picture vision kind of stuff is that I just like seeing people reach their potential. Like I think it's within me. Like I want to achieve my potential. I want to be the best version of myself I can be, and thrive in business, in relationships, in parenting, and I want the same for others. And I see you doing that, and I can't help but get behind that,
And that's the king, warrior, magician, lover.
Yeah.
So Chris, what's keeping you thriving, and what is thriving in your life today?
Wow, man. That's a really great question. What is keeping me thriving is, I think, mission and purpose, and then obviously family as well. All of them combined, they keep me thriving. They keep me focused on the bigger picture. My family, first and foremost. They're the next generation. My children are so important to me, and they're just limitless potential, right? Like I see them, and I just, I want to impart everything that I can on them that I've learnt in my time being alive. I didn't have a father in the picture, so that for me has been a big unlearning, and how I show up for them and how I want to continue showing up for them. So that's like at the core of it. That's what matters for me. But then also, once again, tying it back to that, not having a father in my life has made me reflect on what it is to be a man in this world. What kind of man that I want to be, and defining that for myself. And so I think a big thing that ties into that is purpose and mission, and the values that I have around community, and being a breathwork instructor, and the things that make me thrive are these projects like this, and being involved in stuff like this. This is not the only podcast I'm involved in. I work with a coach who runs a gym out at Coogee, and he's got me involved in his projects. I'm going to Fiji on Wednesday. It's just, there's so much life happening right now. The wheels are in motion, and I feel like I'm being pulled forward. Like I'm being called, the hero's journey, like called to adventure, called to a greater purpose. And it's all of that. It's family, it's service to community, and it's also self as well. There's a lot of, there's another part that ties into that, is that, recently I went and attended Sacred Sons, and that was a way for me to fill up my cup, because I want to be able to spill back into the world.
Well, that's the I we all. So, you fill your cup up and then you come back home.
Yeah.
And, that cup overflows to your family, then your community.
That's it.
Yeah. So let's back it up to before the self-development. Because I remember back in episode number 1, if you guys haven't listened to that, you shared that, we share similar backgrounds and stories and family issues. And we were both into hip-hop back in the day. So, yeah, let's dive into, what was Chris' life like before the self-development journey?
Yeah. I mean, I go back to my teen years probably, or even earlier than that. But, I grew up in a single-parent household. I often mention this in like workshops that I facilitate. A single-parent household that was quite often stressed out. And so that environment, that was a pretty challenging upbringing. I grew up in a single household, mother holding it down with 3 kids, my 2 sisters, my younger and older sister. And without a dad in the picture, it's quite tricky to navigate through. And I think there was a lot of childhood experiences that sort of shaped my trajectory to where I'm at now, why I'm drawn to what I'm drawn to now, and why I want to give back to community, I guess, to give back to that younger version of myself, and the people who may have experienced similar things that I've gone through. And I've actually connected with people throughout this journey as well, people who have, experienced similar things in a way. But yeah, life before personal development, it was tricky growing up in that kind of household. Starting to get a little bit emotional just kind of thinking about it. But yeah, I didn't really know who I was when I was younger. I didn't really have the guidance of a father to show me the way, impart his wisdom, help me navigate some of the struggles that I would be experiencing at that time of my life. I was kicked out of home quite young. I was either in refuges or couch surfing. And at one point I lived with drug dealers and drug addicts, with my older sister who went down that path, and she started, falling into the wrong crowd of people, falling into addictions and finding ways to cope with the trauma and stress that our upbringing, surrounded us with. And so that kind of exposure, I knew when I was quite young that I didn't really want to be exposed to this. It's not like it was a choice. It was more like I was thrown into it and I had to accept it and I had to figure it out. There was no rule book. But yeah, from there, there were times where it was just like, I knew this isn't where I wanted to be. I was probably like around 15, 16. I saw a lot of violence. I experienced things like being in a home invasion, having a gun put to my head, having my belongings stolen at gunpoint, seeing my older sister succumb to drug addiction, to heroin addiction, to ice addiction, being around people who go around killing people, robbing people. These were not people that I aspired to be, And I think it was a certain point in my life that sort of put me on a trajectory where it was like a crossroads. Like, do I keep going this way? I can see how much harm this is causing my sister's life. Or do I shift gears? Do I try and figure out how to get through this life without any kind of direction, without any kind of elder giving me guidance? And so there was a point, and this is sort of like, skipping ahead some of what I'd gone through, but there was a point in my life where I had to make that decision. It was a tipping point. Like, I obviously was not going to get anywhere on this self-destructive path. And so I made the decision to sort of, in a way, separate from where my sister was at in her life, because she kind of took on the role of my caretaker. And I went off and, started, looking into a career, started to get little jobs here and there. And then I sort of started to get into this, like, personal development journey just naturally by learning how can I improve my life? How can I improve my well-being at the gym? So I started there. Started training at the gym. Started listening to things on YouTube and podcasts, and started taking in information of people who sort of ended up being like mentors in a way. Like, Joe Rogan and martial arts practitioners and then wellness practitioners. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up working at a CrossFit gym. It was interesting. I was actually, I was really looking for an outlet to express what I was dealing with at the time. That was poetry. That was the spoken word community. You mentioned hip hop. I had a love for hip hop since I was young. Tupac, Nas, Biggie, J. Cole, Kendrick, the modern greats. And that's extended to me actually wanting to go and pursue poetry at one point and express some of the difficult upbringing that I had. And that became an outlet for me. I guess at the time I didn't think of it, I didn't realize it, but it was a way for me to process that trauma. It was a form of talk therapy for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, one thing led to another. I met a coach who was actually an academic and a poet himself, and he ran a CrossFit gym, and he invited me to come and work from his gym. And I got exposed to other poets in the arena of spoken word poetry from the UK, and they sort of became mentors to me. And I started to naturally gravitate towards like youth work and working in this like physical wellness space, the mental wellness space. And one thing kind of like, it just kept snowballing from there, right? The importance of community, the impact of community. I've shared this on a podcast before, and I've always stood by this, that there's the transliteral meaning of community is communicare. It's the Latin root that it means to impart, share, and make common. And being in community has really helped me in that sense that, it's helped me to figure out who I am, to find out who I am, and to develop my skills and my traits. And that's sort of just always been a guiding light for me, like a North Star, yeah? Like it just, community has given me a platform to express myself, whether it's poetry, whether it's through, working in the industries like I've been fortunate to work in the fitness industry, the fashion industry, working for big brands and gyms, and getting the time and the space to develop my skills and contribute to those societies, those communities. And then it's just continued, just this snowballing kind of thing, like just from one thing to the next, one community to the next, and always getting that chance to just express myself and to harness my abilities, to harness my skills, to just be in service of community. And that's just been a really big factor throughout my life.
It's massive, like where you've taken yourself out of a destructive place.
Yeah.
And you've put yourself in these communities where there's an opportunity for change and an opportunity for growth and building tribe, and like you keep meeting these new people and they give you these little bits of wisdom or these experiences that you can sort of take that on, and then wherever you go in life, then you have that with you, and you can share, and it almost shapes. It's so crazy to think it's like all these little things on the journey, even though sometimes they might not be where you're supposed to go, you gather so much wisdom and so much knowledge and experience on that little path. Then when you get to, I'm not saying the destination because no one ever gets to the destination, but it's like when you get to where you're comfortable and you're happy that you want with what you want to be sharing with the world, then you've got all that wisdom to be sharing in that experience as well, and changing other people's lives. And then it's like, it's like the mountain, right? You're climbing up the mountain and you're bringing the crew with you. Creating that community.
100%. And I liken it to the hero's journey thing as well, is that along the journey you meet others that are like, they're either ahead of you, they could be mentors, or you meet allies, people who are on the same kind of trajectory as you, and they help you. They want to assist you. They want to teach you what they know, so that you keep going on your journey and you can get to that place where you get the gold and the wisdom, and you can bring it back to your communities and to your families.
Well, sometimes your mentors need you,
Yeah.
Someone that's a little less experienced, but they might have a different perspective that the mentor couldn't see, you know. So it's like the teacher becomes the teacher's teacher.
Yes.
Yeah. So where did you find? So after the CrossFit and you know the mindfulness sort of stuff, like where did the breath work and then the ice baths, and I remember you mentioning that you've done sat with ayahuasca and stuff as well. So like where did all that sort of come into the playing field?
Yeah, so that was probably around 2018, 2019. I used to work for a company called EHP Labs. It was a supplements company. And I was very much like entrenched in that career of graphic design and visual arts and all that kind of stuff. But I was listening to podcasts around the time because I was expanding on my personal development journey. It wasn't just the fitness stuff, not just the mindset stuff, the entrepreneurial stuff. Started getting into Aubrey Marcus's podcast. And then from there, like, you know, I heard about ayahuasca. I heard Joe Rogan and him have an interview about that. And I wanted to dive a little bit deeper because I wanted to look at my trauma. I wanted to look at my childhood trauma and figure out what was there for me. I have done ayahuasca a couple of times now, San Pedro as well. And ayahuasca was quite an eye-opener for me. It really showed me my wounds and the stuff where I needed to work on. And it was shortly after doing ayahuasca that I got exposed to breathwork. Because at the time that I'd gone and experienced ayahuasca and I was working at this company, I used to run an event space. It was like a community event space, ran all sorts of different workshops, wellness focused kind of things, yoga, meditation, sober dance parties. It was like I was living a double life at the time because I had this career that I was focused on, but I had this massive warehouse space that I was doing all these events on the weekend, and I had to keep them separate. It was like a sort of like an NDA thing. Like I didn't want them knowing too much about what was going on. But I got exposed to breathwork there actually. It was like about 2 weeks prior to COVID hitting and locking down the world. There was a couple that flew in from New Zealand. You might have seen them on Instagram. They go by Awaken Breathwork. Lucas Mack and Helly Weston. And so they came, and this is sort of around the time that, you know, Wim Hof was rising to popularity. I'd actually kind of met Johannes of Breathless prior at my studio, but I didn't really know him too well or wasn't really familiar with breathwork. But this couple came, they ran a workshop that ran over 2 days, holotropic breathwork, and it just rocked my world. It blew my mind open because, like I said, I went and experienced ayahuasca previously, and I had these profound insights and downloads and the visuals and everything. But then during this holotropic breathwork, I got to have the same somatic releases that I had with ayahuasca without all the visuals. I got to have these insights and these downloads that without ingesting a psychedelic substance. And it was all through my body, and it was all through, you know, the process that happens in the brain, and it was all through the breath. And it was like 4 hours, 2 days, 4 hours each day, just intense breathing and, you know, music playing. And like the way I like to explain it is like I got to witness the entire spectrum of human emotion in that room over those 2 days.
Wow.
Every emotion you could think of, rage, sadness, joy, laughter, all these different emotions, like 150 so people in that room. And that just cracked me open. And I really wanted to figure out what was going on. And so it kind of fell down a rabbit hole there during COVID lockdowns. Like, because literally like a week after that, COVID came, shut down my studio. I had to pack up, fell into a depression, but I had breathwork. And I just became obsessed, jumped on YouTube, learnt everything I could. And then once again, snowballed. And I found Breathless and met you at Breathless. And it's just sort of been like this deep dive of exploring that journey.
So how did you integrate after the ayahuasca? And you just mentioned, you know, bringing the breath.
Yeah.
You just dove deep into that. But how did you integrate more the ayahuasca experience? Was that with all the insights that you had? How did you bring what you learned or what you discovered home?
To be honest, I still feel like I am integrating it. Yeah. I haven't felt the call to do ayahuasca for a few years, and that's another big aspect of doing Aya is that people feel the call. It's like Aya calls you to come and sit with it. And I have felt that the integration has been the biggest aspect of it. And the integration is the day-to-day. It's the chop wood, carry water aspect.
Wash dishes.
Exactly. Are you doing your spiritual hygiene every day? Are you, cutting down from your addictions, from your workaholism? Are you, the things that the insights that I had during those experiences, am I implementing them in my day-to-day life? That for me has been the biggest part of the journey. Because it's not about going off and doing all these retreats and learning all these things and I know breathwork now. It's like, how do you apply it?
Yeah.
You can't just what's that saying? Like, knowledge alone is not power. Knowledge applied is real power.
Yeah.
You can go off and learn all these things, but like if you put yourself in the arena and you actually, share the wisdom that you've been taught, then that's the integration. And it's down to your day-to-day life, and then how you show up in the world as well.
Yeah.
What we do here in the home reflects in the outer world.
Exactly. The are we all mentality.
Yeah.
Always, I think I've mentioned on almost every podcast how important the are we all is, because if you can't serve yourself first, how do you expect to serve your family? How do you expect to serve your community? Because eventually a rock is going to come into your path and knock you off course, and you're just going to be fall back to where an addiction to bad habits, bad patterns that are taking you off your trajectory, or you're not showing up for your family, being more selfish, self-indulgence, which like you said with the eye, like with the mushrooms, I'm still integrating that huge mushroom journey I had with my wife Kira. It's crazy, like the communication that we now have around our day-to-day life, from everything from sex to how we're going to run the day, how we're going to show up today for our son, like but the sex was a massive one. Communication around sex was like the biggest thing that we learned, and we're still integrating that. Like, it's so crazy to think that we were together for 7 years and we were sort of just doing the same sort of thing in the bedroom. I was sort of expecting that Kira was that's just how she likes sex, and that's how just I like sex. But when you create this safe environment around the conversation of it, then you can actually go into the deeper conversations that sort of might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But when you have the conversations, it makes the sex like fire.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. But so let's talk a little bit about your fatherhood and how you've shown up, because I know you've experienced some challenges as well being a father. So what are some of the things that come up, some of the triggers, some of the challenges you've experienced so far, how you've worked through them?
Well, as I mentioned, like, the integration is still happening. It was probably a couple years or so, I'd say about a year or so now, that I wasn't integrating too well. It was probably a year into my son's birth. So I've got 2 kids. Been at this for a while now, but with my son's birth, there was a time where I was actually struggling. I was struggling with my sense of self. Wasn't where I wanted to be quite yet, and I was falling into addictive coping mechanisms, alcoholism and porn. Those were my 2 vices. I can say that I've cut both of them out. I can confidently say that. And that was due to my triggers, due to not facing my stuff, and leaning into those habits and those addictions to numb myself or to suppress what was actually there. Breathwork's been a huge modality to actually help me to feel what's there. And I think that's kind of down to, I won't go too much into that, but the societal pressure that men feel to not, just to push it down, to man up and not talk about this stuff, and you're a pussy if you have all these emotions. Like, it's an old way of thinking. But back to your question. I have had some experiences with fatherhood that had been quite difficult because of my own upbringing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have my father in the picture. We've actually, we actually have a conversation now. We actually are in each other's life in some way. It's still not where I want it to be yet. There's still a bit of a void there.
You and your father?
Yeah, me and my father now, but at least we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
At least we're talking now. At least he's letting me see his side of the picture that I didn't see when I was growing up. I only got my mother's side. And so it's working through that conditioning that I was given. And then I think it was also just like taking the ownership of that I am a father now. And, some of the stuff that I've had to work through is like, presence with my children. How present am I really with them? Am I on my phone while I'm with them? Or am I checking out when I'm with them? Or am I actually there with them, reading a book with them, listening to them, and, exploring their interests? Like, that's for me, like, it's been such a blessing. It's forcing me to slow down at times because I have such a go, go, go mentality that I'm still stuck in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, fatherhood has really forced me in a lot of ways to level up because that time that I was really struggling, I went through a separation. Cass and I separated for a year and I had to move out and we went separate ways and got different places and had to do the co-parenting thing for a while. And that was a big year of growth for me because it was for me that time and space to look at myself and work on myself was vital to get us back together. And I think that was part of the reason why we came back together, is because I had that time to work on all the stuff that I was talking about, cut out the addictions, work on myself, look at my wounds and my triggers, and get back to a place of wholeness and homeostasis, so that they don't run my life. There's that Carl Jung quote that if you don't make the if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your life and you call it fate.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, I know that's my shadow aspect. That's the kind, like the things that are underneath the surface is what I need to look at, what I need to work on. And to sort of answer that question as a whole is that's what the integration looks like to me.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, what just came up for me is being present with my son. Like sometimes I've just so infatuated about what he's doing. His little smile, so I get my phone out to take a photo, and then sometimes I'll just put my phone back down and I'm like, let's just soak up this moment. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's hard. It's a hard one because you want the memories, but it's like you just also need to be in that moment and experience it fully.
Yeah,
because the more they watch you, they're just gonna. How old until he's a toddler and then he's trying to pick up the phone and we're saying, well, don't do that, but then it's like we're no better because we're the same.
100%.
They're just gonna follow suit.
100%.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's talk a little bit about masculinity, right? Like the term a friend of mine mentioned on his podcast, Beneath the Surface podcast. Shout out to my friend Carter Russell. He mentioned that toxic masculinity, the word toxic masculinity, is more so a lacking of masculinity in this world.
Yeah.
Would you agree on that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. I don't like that term, first and foremost.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, look, I really don't vibe with that term, and no one gave us a rule book for masculinity. Yeah. Right? Like if you grew up like I did and you didn't have a father around and he had an absent father and there's generations of that, how many other people have that as well? And so, yeah, maybe in some degree that does exist, that there is a void of masculinity or role models. And you see this rise in they call it the manosphere. You get these people like Andrew Tate's and Jordan Peterson's of the world, and you get all these different like male figures that are the definition of what a man should be. And there is okay, so I want to make this distinction that there is some really great traits of some of the stuff they talk about, right? Like there's some stuff about make sure that you look after your physical well-being, that you work hard, that you have goals and a vision and all that kind of stuff. But then there are some toxic traits embedded within that. Some of it is around ownership of women and how you know, a woman should, you know, react and work around you. And I think that the the landscape of, from what I've seen and what I've experienced with like sacred sons and stuff like that, is that the landscape of masculinity is changing and it's growing and it's evolving, and it's continuously going in that direction, as it should. Look, I think that we're all a work in progress, and that when it comes to masculinity, I don't have it all figured out. I can't say that I do, but I'm taking as many positive steps as I can to get better, to get around other men, to be in council, to do men's work, or, you know, be around other examples of what, you know, a good example of a man is. A man that has integrity, a man that has strong family values. These are the kinds of people I look up to, that I want to have as role models and people that I model. Just as you said, you know, our kids model our behaviors. Well, what about the people around us? They say you're the sum of the people you spend the most time with. You know, who is in your community? Who are the people that you listen to, you're taking information from? Are they good examples? I don't know if that answers your question fully, but like, I think for me personally, I think that for me as a man, that's important to me, is making sure that I have the right community of people around me.
Yeah, fully. Like, and yeah, I don't agree with the word toxic masculinity either, but the way I see it is a lacking as well, like a lacking of masculinity, or a lacking of femininity in the masculine.
Yes.
That softness, the lover, the king, that's showing up for the kids, the community, and first and foremost himself. Like, how are you treating yourself? So you're in a calm state, like you mentioned, the breath work. The breath has been such a big tool for you to bring yourself back down, especially getting over your addictions. I myself has gone through similar things with addictions, and you know, to find that stillness when your nervous system is just racing, and to be able to bring yourself back to a calm state of mind, to be able to show up for, you know, those times. Like, for instance, this week's just been crazy. Like, we're running out of space. We're doing a renovation, and Ember's teething, and there's just so much chaos and noise going on, and like sometimes I just want to fucking scream, and I'm like, I can't do that. How is he gonna feel if I react like that?
Yes.
So I need to take a deep breath and just keep just being there and showing up and being. When Kira's, you know, having a shower, having a meal in the bathroom, well then, how am I bringing that softness to make him feel that he's safe, just as you would in mum's hands? You know what I mean? She's got the magic boob.
Yeah.
We don't have that, so we need to calm them down just by making them feel that safety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there, and I have to agree with that as well. Yeah. That there needs to be that softness brought in.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make you weak. You know, I think both men and women have nurturing traits in their own ways, and it's important to have your own self-care as well. Like, how the fuck are you going to show up in the world if you don't look after your shit? If you don't tend to your garden? Like, you will have the outbursts of anger if you keep pushing it down and suppressing it, because it becomes overwhelming and has only one way to go. Yeah. So, like, in order to show up as a better father and a better parent, better father, a better partner, you got to look after these things. And if that's a feminine trait, then so be it, man. I want to have those kind of traits. I want to be more capable of looking after myself, so that I can be more capable of looking after others.
Yeah, exactly. Wear it with pride, you know.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit on what you're doing before, because I want to finish on Sacred Sons. Let's talk a little bit about Align Breathwork and what you're working on there. And you mentioned you're going to Fiji, and was there somewhere else? Was it Bali? Can I say
Bali? Bali is later this year.
Yeah.
Uluru as well, and then there's another retreat potentially in the Blue Mountains. Wow. Sort of all of these things are falling into place, being around other instructors that I've really, no pun intended, aligned with. Like, I vibe with and they vibe with me. But yeah, the reason why I called it aligned breathwork, it was sort of sitting with me towards the end of last year. Like, what do I want to call this thing? How do I start doing my own thing and fly solo? Because I was doing stuff with Breathless for a while. I still love them and I still support them and work with them. But I did a retreat last year with a group called Men's Medicine and on the Gold Coast. Shout out to Lino and that crew. And it's Coach Holler. Yeah, Lino Holler. So he's been a really positive positive mentor and role model in my life. He's been like the big brother that I didn't have and the example of a father figure that I didn't have. But yeah, I mean, that retreat sort of planted the seed for me. I got to start doing my own thing, and a line came up for me because whenever I do breath work, I just feel more centered. I feel more aligned within myself. This is me and my homeostasis. This is how I should be really feeling. And life knocks me out of balance all the time, but whenever I do my breath work, I come back into that center. And so that's why I called it that. And that's, I mean, for me on a personal level, that's what it means to me, but I also want others to feel that way. That's why I do this. I got Fiji next week. That's with the Elevate crew in Coogee. Another mentor of mine, he's my personal trainer. Help him out with his podcast, and he's flying me out to Fiji to do a retreat and teach breathwork and cold exposure. Two modalities that I do personally as my self-care. I do cold exposure 3 times a week out of engine room down the road. And that's for me so I can develop stress resilience. So I can be more capable of handling and tolerating stress in my life, because I've got a busy life with a lot on my plate. And basically that's what I'm going to be doing at these retreats and at a lot of my upcoming workshops as well, is I want to teach the ins and outs, the science of what's going on in your body with breathwork and cold exposure, and just basically all the stuff that I've learnt and I've soaked in the past few years, because I want it to become mainstream. And so I do that in gyms and wellness spaces and try to make it accessible and informative and fun and community focused as well. So there's a lot of like, people get to connect with each other in the space and, you know, share their intentions and different activities that I throw in there. I keep it a mystery, but like, yeah, that's where I'm headed with Align.
Yeah, you mentioned fun.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, no offense to anyone out there who's doing things seriously, I think that has its place as well. But for me and my experience, I love the funness. I love the silliness. Yeah. That's why I love Gene Kelly. He just brings some silly aspect to the breath work, and he's teaching serious things. And he's taking people through, you know, traumatic experiences, like that they're diving deep into some wounds there. But then he brings that funness to it, and that's where the safety comes in. Like we learn at Breathless, like, you know, vulnerability and safety equals healing, as opposed to vulnerability and danger equals trauma. Yeah, so I think it's so important that the funness has to come in, the silliness. It's 100%. Playful. Yeah.
And I think that's how you also breed that environment of safety as well. Like, people bring down their guards and they can let themselves be seen and bring down the armor and the masks a little bit, because it is, you know, quite triggering work. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about some experiences that people have gone through that have been quite difficult. So if we can bring that sense of safety and calmness and even just a little bit of joy in there as well. Like, I learned this thing, like the best way for me to remember what the vagus nerve is, and it's the dumbest way, but I remember this from the retreat I did at Men's Medicine, was that they explained that your vagus nerve runs all the way down to your anus. And for some reason that's always stuck with me. And it's just a funny, stupid little anecdote that I remember. And I think people remember those things. Like, people remember the way you made them feel. So that's why I try to implement that in my workshops. I want them to feel that sense of community and feel like they can sort of let go of things and just be at ease with things.
Well, it's like, from the brainstem to the anus, right? And that's why a lot of yoga, it's like hatha yoga and stuff. I don't know if you've ever experienced hatha yoga, but it's like breathing down into the anus. Like, it's like, it seems a little bit odd at first, but then, like, I think that's a little bit too serious though. It's like, let's have some fun about it. Let's giggle about it. It's fucking gives a shit, you know? But But yeah, like bringing. You mentioned the vagal toning. That's
Yes.
what I've been getting into.
Yeah.
When my son's like just screaming that high pitch in my ear, and I can't do anything about it. I'm just holding him, and I'm starting to feel like I want to scream as well. What I've been doing is humming, because humming is like a form of breath work, and it's also a form of relaxing the vagus nerve. It's called vagal toning by using the humming. So that's been a massive...
Bee breath, right? Like I like to do Bramari with my kids as well. I do the humming breath, and now they automatically do it in the car sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, not only that, it's like it produces nasal nitric oxide. It lowers your cortisol and stress levels. It's fucking layers to it.
I didn't realize, but I used to hum when I got car sick when I was a kid.
Oh, right.
And it wasn't until I did the breathwork training that I realized I was actually calming something
intrinsically
down.
Doing that. Yeah.
Just made me feel less car sick for some reason. I just hum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's crazy, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's touch a little bit on Sacred Sons, bro. What happened?
Oh, man. I don't want to give too much away of the mystery, but it was a process of death and rebirth.
Yeah.
Like the way that they hold space, the activities that they take you through, the deep processes they take you through. There's a lot of... It's very much informed by Peter Levine's work. Like you can feel that woven into it. How they guide you through your past experiences and your trauma. They very much hold space in that way. There's a bit of NLP tied into it as well. But man, pretty profound. Like they took us through mother wounds on one day, father wounds another day, and then individually and as a collective, we would work through stuff. And we're always supported by the brotherhood the entire time. We were put into different pods, because I think there was about 98 of us in total.
Wow.
And about 80 of those were actually attendees. The rest were facilitators. So facilitators, like head facilitators, and then like they called it Wolf Pack, like the crew that would support them.
Yeah.
And I think it was the second time they've been in Australia. Perth was a week prior to that, but it was also the biggest Sacred Sons they've ever done.
What?
In the history of Sacred Sons.
Wow.
So Australia showed up, like they turned up for this. There were, some really great leaders in the space as well, which was awesome to see. It's not beneath them or anything like that. They need it just as much, which was so cool to see.
When you say leaders, you mean like leaders in Australia doing their own thing?
In the men's space, yeah. There's quite a lot of them up north in the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was just a handful of them from there. There were people who filmed from New Zealand, interstate as well, like Victoria, Melbourne, Canberra. But yeah, man, it was just an awesome experience. Really cracked me open. I highly recommend it if you want to dive a little bit further.
I wanted to come, but I was putting the podcast first.
I know.
Where my money was going.
I respect that totally. I totally respect that. But if the means the opportunity ever does come up, highly recommend it. The crew at Sacred Sons really know how to really help men tap into their masculinity. Help men who are struggling in their masculinity or their fatherhood or their sense of purpose. It was just such a profound experience. Like if it wasn't myself going through a process, it was witnessing somebody else go through their process and seeing them find the gold and finding the gold within ourselves, hearing somebody go through something and like a light bulb moment go, fuck, that shows up in my life, and seeing them, work their way through this experience helps me to figure out how do I work through my own experience. Yeah. And so that's been like still integrating from that, because it was only a couple of weeks ago, but so much gold and so much like just fucking like cutting out the bullshit in my life. Yeah.
Did you find when you came home, obviously you're releasing a lot of your own stuff, but having to listen to what other people have gone through, you're initially taking that on as well?
Yes.
So did you find you had to do some sort of releasing when you came home as well? Because I remember after the men's expedition that I did, I was helping facilitate, so I didn't do any releasing while I was down there. I was just taking everything on board. And then when I got home, I was just holding Ember. He was still quite young at that stage, just little baby. And I was just holding him on my chest. And then Kira came up and hugged me from behind. And I had my eyes closed. And I had the most craziest experience. Like my whole body felt electric. And my eyes were closed and all I could see was white. Like this bright, like whiter than white you could ever see, you know. And then I just started bawling my eyes out. And it just came out of nowhere. And I felt like that was me releasing a lot of the shit that I had heard over the weekend and taken on, you know.
Yeah.
Did you experience anything similar? Or
In your own way?
At
the retreat, I had a few really powerful processes that I went through. One of them helped me work through some childhood trauma, some of the stuff I touched on earlier that I felt like I had resolved, but I didn't really have had it resolved. I definitely did then. And then secondly, I had an experience where they do this thing called sacred combat, where you get paired up with somebody and you do boxing. That's my son. You do boxing with somebody you're paired up with, and that can be quite challenging for some people.
For sure.
But on the last night, I got paired up with somebody. I did it for my clan that I was with, and after that fight, nobody actually wins, but it was more of like the process of it.
Yeah.
I got brought back to my crew. My clan all lifted me up, like above them, and I had this surge of energy run through my nervous system, and I was just like convulsing while I was up in the air, and they were holding me, and I felt similar to that, like that white light and this surge of energy run through me. I felt lighter. I felt clearer. I did come back clearer, but since then I've taken some time to do my own spiritual hygiene practices. I've done a few breakthroughs for myself over the past few days to really just clear out anything that's there.
When you do your own breakthroughs, do you follow along to anything, or are you pretty good? You can just go for it.
I usually have like my own music and flows.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I like to make a habit of is like the journeys that I take people on. I take myself on those journeys.
Yeah.
Like there's that saying, like, you can't take people as far as you haven't gone yourself. Like, I make sure before I take anybody through a ceremony or a journey, I've gone through that myself first. So I've been doing that quite a bit for myself recently.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so what's in store for the year? I know you mentioned like Bali and Fiji, but you're also doing men's works, which we haven't really touched on what you're doing. So what are you pulling forward at the men's retreats or the men's workshops for mental health and that sort of stuff? How are you bringing...
Yes.
How are you approaching that for the men?
Yeah, there were a lot of like seeds that were planted while I was at Sacred Sons, and that ties into the brotherhood that was formed there as well. There were some men there that solid guys that are in their communities doing stuff or want to start things in their communities. And I've had a background in this. I used to run men's circles and retreats, prior even to Breathless, like going through the facilitator training. And so I intend to bring some of that. They've invited me to go off and to be included as the facilitators and run segments and stuff like that. So I'll be bringing that forward. And I've got a brother out Western Sydney who does breathwork and spinal energetics and all that stuff. And he wants to start running men's only breathwork like ceremonies. So he's going to be including me in that. We're going to be bringing some of what we picked up at Sacred Sons and some other stuff, and keeping it kind of a secret for now, but that's stuff that I will be moving into more. The thing in Bali as well, that's a men's retreat with men that I met and trained with at Men's Medicine. So I think it's all just sort of woven into my work in ways. Like even when I run my own workshops, there's a flavor there. There's a bit of everything from everywhere.
1 second. We got the dog getting tangled up. Yeah, so with the men's work sort of stuff, like there's just a recovery centre that just opened up in Singleton, and I've tried to do a few workshops out in the country, and I think I was mentioning it to you before, like with the coal mining sort of mentality, it's I don't want to judge these types of people, but a lot of the people that do work in the coal mines aren't really looking after their health. You know, they're doing these dog shit night shift hours. So they're having energy drinks on the way to work at bloody 7-8 o'clock at night. They're throwing it out the window of the car. Like it's even the place, like the country, it's this beautiful countryside, and then it's just littered across the side of the road from all the coal miners. And it's like, if they don't care about what they're doing, why would they care about themselves, you know?
Or care about what they're doing to the world.
So with the recovery center opening up, I find that is a good little hub that I'm going to try crack into. Not just for the men as well. I think the women need it just as much. And there's a good little community starting to rise out in the country of mother circles that Kira's been going to.
Awesome.
So there's definitely potential and space for it. It's just learning about how to crack it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's the best place to plant the seed as well. I've got a mate who does FIFO work, and he's also a breathwork instructor, and he's bringing it to the FIFO community, and I think they need it. They do. Like, if they don't have an outlet, it's going to show up in destructive, maladaptive ways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for instance, like that with, so like, they're too afraid to talk, like you were saying. It's like, or they don't have the space, or especially like that sort of tradie coal mining mentality. It's like, if they speak, then all the boys are going to give them shit.
Yes.
And it's funny because I've been in those workplaces where all the dudes are in a circle and they're like, what? You do yoga? Gay?
Yeah.
And then, you know, all the dudes leave and there'd be one person left, and that person was the one that was saying shit, and he's like, so where do you do this at? It's pretty funny how it works like that. But it's obviously that person didn't feel safe to say that.
Yes.
So then he just jumped on the bandwagon of like, fuck, let's be on this side of the fence and not be the one that's, you know, receiving the abuse or the criticism, you know.
Yeah. I think it's important that we change the culture.
Yeah.
And I see it happening. And you think about, like, with men's work and men's communities and men's sheds and men's circles, there was nothing a few years ago. Now there's so many of them.
Yeah.
And that's a sign of the times. Things are changing. You know, on the radio the other day, I heard stuff about, like, how to help with separation and divorce and all that kind of stuff. And if there's a rise in that means there's a rise in men are going to have to look at this shit. Mm-hmm. Men and women. But particularly in reference to this, like, men are going to need spaces. Yeah. And these spaces are out there more commonly than they've ever been.
Yeah.
So that shows me that things are changing.
Yeah. And it's funny to think about it, like the pub was like the watering hole, and that was the sharing circle for men. So I do believe that the pub has a very important place for men to gather and to talk shit, because when they have a few drinks, they do let their guard down, and they do open up about certain things that they wouldn't when they're sober. But you go to a pub now and everyone's on their phones.
Yes.
Everyone's on the pokies.
Yes. That
sort of brotherhood around, you know, the talk shit and the just getting things off their chest is sort of fading away.
Yeah.
But the abuse of the alcohol is still there.
Yeah.
The escapism is still there. They're not going home to their family. They're stuck in that situation.
Yeah. But
then the talk isn't happening anymore. So I think it's a perfect time for the men's work to be rising and coming up into the communities, because it is becoming like evident now that it is everywhere and it's available even out in the country. Like I moved up from Wollongong and it was an abundance there. And when I got out to the country, there was nothing. Yeah. For the first whole year, I didn't see anything around, and I was like, what am I doing here? And then, you know, it wasn't until the second year, some conversations in the sauna started changing. More people started seeing interest in, you know, the self-development, meditation, yoga, just all things about doing for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
That inner work, man. And it doesn't hold any discrimination either. And, like, Sacred Sense is a perfect example of that. The walks of life that I met there are people in every industry and trade who were tradies. There were electricians, there were men's work coaches, there were, you know, chefs, there were personal trainers. There were people who were not doing so much in their life. There were ex-military people. There were people from all walks of life there, and it shows that there must be a trend going on here where there are guys who want to work on this shit. They want to do that inner work, and these spaces exist.
Yeah, And it's important that all these walks of life are coming to these places, because you and I can't touch everyone. Like, just say in the like sort of poetry, hip hop sort of background, we can't touch just them. You know, we can't reach out and do someone that's in military. We don't understand how their mind works and how their experiences. That's why, have you met what's his name, Ernie from Breathwork?
Yeah,
he's an ex-military dude.
Yeah.
And man, some of the way that he takes people through experiences, I could never do it like he does.
Yeah.
I couldn't reach people that have gone through what he's gone through. So that's why I think it's so important that, like Paul Chek mentions, that if you're a personal trainer that's just on your journey, but you're still a little bit overweight, he's like, you're going to be catering to people that if you go into a gym and you're ripped and someone that's a little bit overweight comes in, they're going to feel more intimidated and be like, oh fuck, I'm never going to be able to get to that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a personal trainer that's still just on your journey, you're going to be affecting those people that are at the start, you know?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Representation matters.
Yeah.
And I say this from my experience as well. Simon and I, we ran a breathwork workshop, Marrickville, which is Western Sydney, basically.
Yeah.
And we had people there who have struggled with PTSD, CPTSD, and their own experiences, going, fuck, it's a breath of fresh air to have someone come in here who doesn't look like some white yuppie yogi from eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
Because it's like that whole audience is catered to by those people.
Yeah.
But now we've got a couple of mixed Asian guys here who look like us, representing us.
Yeah.
It's needed from all walks of life, from every background.
And I see Amrita doing the same thing for her community.
That's right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's needed, man. I think it's like agents of change everywhere.
Yeah, dude, for sure. Well, we're getting pretty close on an hour, and you mentioned poetry, bro. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'd love to. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but I do have one that I'll read, if that's cool.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah, some of the spoken word and poetry stuff that you share at the end of the breath work when everyone's coming back to, it's so powerful, man, to feel words impact a nervous system like that is just encapsulate. What's the word I'm looking for?
Encapsulates? Yeah. yeah. No, I hear you, man. I think that's where my poetry mostly stems from as well.
Yeah.
One of the insights I got from Aya was that the first time I did Aya, I had a download drop in that poetry was a way for me to connect to the divine. It's a way for me to, if you want to use the word, channeling a message. And it does. Like if you sit and you meditate and insights come to you, that's you channeling, taking in information, wherever that's coming from, whether it's your own insights or from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But you get to be that vessel, and that's what I love about poetry, is that I get to be that mouthpiece for my own truth. And so that's what I like to end with when we do breath work, like when we did recently. So I might share that. It's the most recent poem, but I wrote this to myself, for myself, and so that I can share that, you know, these are my own personal insights.
Well, it's like what a true artist would say is it wasn't them that did the art, you know, it came through them. And I see that when people are freestyle, like hip hoppers are freestyling, it's like they're closing their eyes and it's just they're getting out of the way for whatever it is, source, God, whatever, just to come and speak through them. And yeah, it's amazing to see. Hey.
Yeah, no, I believe that too, man. Some of my favorite artists, at the top of the game, they're like that, man. They're very deeply spiritual people who are connected to something greater than themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, with that note, will you let the pain you felt be a poison or a potion, a prison or a portal? Will you fall back to the things that hold you back from being whole, or will you draw a line in the sand? Take a breath, take control, take a look within your soul. Let go of what no longer serves so you can process and pick up where you left off being the best of yourself. When shadows fill the sky, you know it's time to rise. Dig deep and align with the hero that's inside, because we decide the shape we're in, the waves we emit. Follow your inner guidance and brilliance with discipline, intuition, and resilience so the world outside matches the ways we resonate from within. Because we decide which way we'll live and the ways we give. When it all feels too heavy, it's time to breathe again. Breathe it in. When you feel like you're drowning, giving up and giving in, let that breath go. And be like water, my friend.
Oof. Where can people find you, man?
Align.breathwork on Instagram, and @Sulfa. I'm usually most active on Instagram.
Sick, man. Well, thanks for everything that you've been doing for the podcast, man, and thanks for giving me your time. I know it's a bit full on with the kids and running around. You're a very busy man, but like, I can't believe it's March already. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, man. It feels like it's been like multiple months crammed into a couple of months.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, Chris, thanks so much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, brother.